All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking some truly fascinating end times narrations from Imam Ali, specifically zeroing in on the Mahdi's campaign. We'll be drawing directly from classical sources, narrations 552 through 555, to visualize a campaign that sweeps across the ancient world. Now, Antioch isn't necessarily the grand finale of this prophecy, but it's absolutely the crucial pivot point where everything changes.
But before we get into the exact roadmap, we really have to ask ourselves a pretty wild question. How does a narrative of absolute, total warfare suddenly transform into a carefully calculated negotiation at the Dome of Abbas? It's a huge, jarring shift, right? You have this massive, bloody conflict, and then suddenly, a complete halt. How does a battle of that magnitude transition into a structured treaty? That's the puzzle we're going to piece together today.
So, here is how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the Battle of Tarsus, move on to the Antioch Truce, look at the year of preparation, explore the catalog of fates, and finish up with the faces on the geography.
Kicking things off with Part 1, the Battle of Tarsus and the sheer chaos of war.
To really wrap our heads around the piece that comes later, we first need to grasp the massive scale of this conflict. Narration 552 describes the Mahdi preparing an enormous fleet, specifically 400 ships being built right on the coast of Acre. I mean, the logistics alone described in these classical texts point to a military campaign of unprecedented size.
And the Roman response? It's equally massive. According to the text, the Romans march out under 100 crosses, and stationed under every single one of those crosses, 10,000 soldiers. So you have this staggering mobilization of forces gathering at Tarsus, completely geared up for conquest. The stage is basically set for an epic collision.
Let's track how this plays out geographically. First, the Mahdi ships are constructed down at Acre. Then, the Roman forces dig in at Tarsus. This brings us to a massive clash. Scholars point to a corroborating account, narration 554, which gives us pinpoint geographic precision here. It says the battle happens exactly 10 parasangs, which is roughly 30 miles, from the city of Raqqa on the Euphrates River. Finally, the defeated Roman forces are forced into a retreat, falling back to Antioch.
And narration 5454 really doesn't hold back on the sheer brutality of this clash. It literally says, the water of the river will change with blood, and its sides will stink with severe corpses. It's just a visceral, terrifying picture of total war. The Mahdi engages the Roman forces, and the devastation on the Euphrates is absolute, which is exactly what forces the Roman king to flee.
Moving into Part 2, the Antioch Truce, our narrative's narrow neck.
So, right after this staggering violence, the story suddenly funnels down into a single, highly strategic pivot point. The defeated Roman king falls back to a very specific spot in Antioch known as the Dome of Abbas. The Mahdi pursues him there, but instead of a final crushing siege, the entire momentum of the war completely halts. The king sends a messenger asking for peace, and suddenly we're in negotiations.
The terms of this treaty are actually brilliant. We go from absolute total war, with immense casualties and prisoners being held, to an instant, structured shift. The Mahdi demands the Jizya tax and the unconditional release of all captives back to their families. The king agrees to this, but he has one condition. He cannot be expelled from Roman lands. And the Mahdi actually accepts. It's this incredible masterclass in diplomacy that results in a strictly managed peace.
Which brings us to Part 3, a year of preparation, treating Antioch as a launching pad.
With the treaty officially struck, we enter this period of quiet preparation. But here's the crucial thing to remember. Antioch is not the final destination. The text is super specific here, stating the Mahdi stays in Antioch for exactly 1 year before marching onward. This isn't just idle rest. Antioch is essentially serving as a strategic launching pad. It's the deep breath before the big push northwest.
And after that year passes, the entire nature of the conquest changes. Narration 552 tells us that as the Muslims march on and pass Roman fortresses, physical combat is completely replaced by spiritual power. It says, whoever follows him will not pass a single fortress without simply declaring, there is no God but Allah, and the walls will literally collapse. The brutal, bloody warfare we saw at the Euphrates, completely gone. The campaign evolves into something entirely different.
Let's shift gears to Part 4, the catalog of fates.
From this localized pocket of peace in Antioch, Imam Ali's narrations zoom back out. Narration 553 serves as this fascinating catalog of end times geography, precisely mapping out distinct apocalyptic fates for different cities. Wasit gets overwhelmed by water.
Azerbaijan is struck by plague, Mosul and Homs face severe hunger, Aleppo is destroyed by lightning, and Damascus sees intense killing. Meanwhile, Jerusalem is uniquely protected from Gog and Magog because it houses the relics of the prophets.
But nestled right inside that larger catalog, we find the specific destiny of Antioch itself. And honestly, this is fascinating, because despite being the site of this great truce, the safe haven where the Mahdi rests for an entire year, its ultimate fate is pretty grim. Antioch will eventually succumb to hunger, inflated prices, and fear. So while it serves this immense strategic purpose as a pivot point, it doesn't get spared from the overall turbulence of the end times.
Finally, Part 5, Faces on the Geography. To really ground this massive, sweeping prophecy, Imam Ali doesn't just list cities and their downfalls. He actually gives us names in narration 555. By explicitly calling out Abd al-Rahman from Antioch, Subay and Muhammad from Aleppo, and Ja'far from Homs, he beautifully puts real human faces on the exact geography we've been tracking. These specific men will rise from the very cities whose apocalyptic fates we just reviewed, stepping forward to join the Mahdi's campaign.
So when we pull back and look at all these sources together, Antioch truly stands out as the ultimate strategic pivot in these narrations. It's this vital intersection, the exact time and place where an era of incredibly bloody warfare suddenly transitions into a structured prophetic peace, giving way to a full year of quiet preparation.
And as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with a really compelling thought. Just look at the magnitude of what we've covered. Ships built by the hundreds, armies of tens of thousands, a river running with blood, a monumental truce, and cities facing these divine fates. If all of this incredible history and prophecy represents just the pause, what on earth happens when the march finally resumes? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for exploring this with me today.